This is Asteria, and we're getting started with a discussion on the latest chapter in The Wandering Inn, which is chapter 8.56. Yeah, yes, Alabaster, we're going for recording round 2. Great chapter, lots of discussion. So we're having a part 2 to this for the people who the folks who weren't able to make it earlier. If you were here earlier, but you want to give your opinion again, please do, because for a lot of this is new for people here. Anyway. So the way we're going to tackle today's topics is we're going to break the chapter into sections. So try and keep your comments and reactions on topic with the section of the chapter that we're covering at that time. So first up is the beginning of the chapter where our favorite only worm, is going through kind of a regular day. And he's, he kind of ends with, oh, it's time to meet with Ryoka after his discussion with the queen, and he goes to find her, and she's not there. So we're going to talk up until that point, when we switch to Ryoka's point of view. So to get started with this section, let's see. We have a couple relevant questions, but really kind of the big thing was, what did you guys think of the conversation between the queen and the worm and how that kind of all was portrayed?
That one kind of hurt to read. I understand why they're reacting in the ways that they are, but they're so totally not on the same page. They kind of are. I don't know how to say it.
And if you guys want to give an opinion, you can either at me in reactions and comments, post there, and I'll read your reaction aloud, or just speak. If you put it in general, I'm not going to speak it out loud, by the way. So, Courier, why did it hurt to read?
It's not hurt as in I'm really disliking that this is happening, but it's just kind of like a empathy, kind of like cringe, since I'm a step back from the whole situation, and you can kind of see where miscommunications could be happening. A lot of the possible miscommunications don't particularly matter with how they're reacting and how they would. It's just.
So was it a writing thing, or you just kind of felt embarrassment on the character's behalf because of how they were?
Yeah, it was more akin to secondhand embarrassment.
Oh, okay, that's fair. Let's see. So Blue Juice is saying that in the queen's defense, Ryoka did essentially make her mom have a very awkward talk with her daughter, and the seer is saying that the queen was quite vindictive. So this conversation was a take on sort of Tiandria sensitivity about, do you think it was a take on Tiandria's sensitivities about, was it a homophobic conversation? Was it the queen feeling awkward about just public perception and it wasn't really homophobia? What was your thoughts there?
I feel like it was mainly about the perception of it, more so than what the content was or what exactly happened, or even if something actually didn't happen, it was miscommunication. I don't think that mattered to the queen at that point. Just the fact that people will talk about this and people come to their own decisions off of incomplete information. And even if that information doesn't matter.
Do you think she carried her reaction too far?
It seemed at first that they were implying that they were going to kill the knights, and I think that would have been a little too far. I don't know what a proper reaction would be, so I would honestly just yield. It's her kingdom. She knows how other people are going to react.
So Blue Juice is saying, imagine how bad it would have been if Heathen had showed up and was like, I've seen Ryoka. What's the big deal?
Ryoka, I'll defend you from those slugs.
Alabaster was sort of agreeing with you. Thinks the queen was mostly indignant and angry over the impropriety of it. So it was more about the fact that the guards were maybe having relations with a prisoner rather than that they were the same gender. I can kind of see it both ways. I did read it initially as homophobia, but when I was looking at Patreon chat and reactions afterwards, I can actually kind of see it also from a perceptions kind of thing. But I think what tipped it into homophobia for me was how much she overreacted about how to punish the guards, right? If it was a perceptions thing, just send the guards away. Don't send them to die. Just send them away to be out of public view for a while, not basically strip them of their rank and sentence them to death. That overreaction is what kind of tipped it.
They get disappeared into a ditch and no one ever talks about them again.
Yeah. The second take was that maybe this is a personal overreaction. Maybe Onya actually does want like a relationship with Ryoka, and she's maybe taking out some personal insecurities.
I think those are all like valid sub reasons for it, but I do think the primary is just, regardless of what it was, just how people could even potentially perceive it, and that's why it's trying to get axed right now.
Yeah, that's definitely. I'd agree with that. Let's see. Okay. Did anybody else have any thoughts about this section of the chapter that they wanted to share or go over?
I was surprised at this section. Never mind.
Yeah, this section. Does anybody have anything else they want to say about a day in the worm, a life in the day of a worm, or his workout routine, or how he was portrayed in this section of the chapter? Give people a chance to chat or type. Courier, who was here earlier that you were chatting with?
About
Before the recording started. I forget their name.
did he leave?
Yes.
I think he left. Jeez.
Something with a P.
No, it was Tilly.
Tilly, can you ping them and just ask if everything's okay? Courier? Thank you. Okay, some hot takes. Alright, so Vizier saying, I wouldn't be surprised if Risavari blowing up at Onia will only come back to bite him. Sort of maybe screw things up that happened later in the chapter. Yeah, making an enemy out of the queen. He seems very dismissive of her, but, you know, there's always... It's a narrative thing that kind of... Mortals disrupting the plans of immortals is a big thing. So I can definitely see that kind of coming up later on. Blue Juice was contributing that maybe the queen is bi, and she's trying to kill any rumors before they grow with sort of an extreme reaction.
I feel a little off about the thirsting queen theory, I guess, but I don't really know anything about the queen's and the king's personal life. So it just seems weird to suggest that. But I get why it's brought up.
Yeah. It's interesting that this one conversation had so many different interpretations. And I think that just is a sign of that it's well written, that it allows all these different perspectives. Like when you think about back to English class in high school, right? How many times did we have to read? Everybody read the same book, but everybody had to interpret it a slightly different way. And it was really only with the well-written stuff that you could do that. And this is an example of that.
How many children did the king and queen have? Was it like 2 girls?
Nope, boy and a girl.
3 girls? I don't remember. It was a boy and a girl. Okay.
As far as we know, there could be more.
Right.
Let's see. Oh, okay. So Quinn had the contribution that they really appreciated the descriptions, like the pillars of the room in Risavari where he's doing his little workout routine. I thought it was cute that he slept around the pillar. I agree.
Yeah, that was really good scene description, I think.
Yeah, that I liked.
Like I've seen similar aesthetics in like animations and stuff, so like it can easily fit into something to visualize.
Definitely.
Even if you can't visualize it.
Yeah, I like that there's more setting description that's kind of working itself in. And I like that it's being weaved into what the characters are doing, not just like, here's some scene description, next.
Yeah.
Yeah, the prose came across really well.
Definitely agree. Okay. All right. So if we are done with this, let's go ahead and move on to our second sort of section of the chapter, which is where we kind of catch up with Ryoka. She has probably correctly anticipated that the knights are going to be punished. And so she's trying to solicit an ally in her Lucifen friend. And so they're traveling to his mansion, I guess mostly as an excuse maybe to get away, but also to meet the Angelum. And there's a bunch of other immortal allies, potential allies, kind of tagging along with her. And she's trying to solicit support in preparation for her conversation with Risavari. So we see quite a few things happen here. One of the first probably big points that quite a few questions center around is the Angelum, right? We get a lot of lore drop in this section. What did you guys think of all the different lore drops? We'll start with the Angelum versus the Lucifen. Any takes on the revelations about the Angelum and the Lucifin and how they kind of interact?
I think my biggest, oh boy moment was their reactions when Ryoka described biblical uh, devils and angels, because they both species recognize those descriptions in some way. I found that really interesting.
What intrigued you about it specifically?
What's that?
What specifically really worked for you? Like, why were you like, oh wow, this is really cool?
I think it was a good, I don't know, either the implication that there is some truth to those descriptions, or the friendly reminder that they have information about Earth stretching back far. Like, they've heard a lot more than we think they've heard.
Oh, definitely. So, like, what did you think of like the part where they were mentioning that the oldest among them had mentioned a promised land or their own, like the implication that they weren't from in-world but from some other place?
I don't think that was implied. I think it was straight out said that they were from somewhere else.
Okay.
And I think they may have called their place, they may have referred to it as firmament, which in a way is a word, but is a word that I've seen aligned with demons and angels kind of as a meta writing aesthetic. Like I've seen the word firmament does pop up in a so it tends to show up more in like the Fugia or certain stuff.
Yeah. One of the things I had from that was somehow they went from a different world to in-world. And I don't know if that was something done by the Fae, by themselves, or we've seen things like the Blighted King using his ritual to summon Earthers. Like, would it be possible to create a variant of that ritual for a different species? Like, how they got there, I think, is interesting.
That's a good point. Could they summon more immortals or somehow to their plane? And Courier, you mentioned firmament. My interpretation of that section of the chapter was that that's what they called in-world. So we finally got some discussion about like what people actually call the world they're living in, and it's interesting that some species don't have a name, others have specific names which you don't really know. Firmament was one of them, though.
Was my interpretation too at first, but thinking about it, I think they would be more likely to say the name of their homeland to see if that rings a bell. And I think it might still be a little too soon for the name of Inverse to be dropped, because that's very potentially some sort of meta spoiler.
True. True. Let's see. Okay, so all right, so let's get some feedback. Vasir saying they're terrified of Angelum because they are so crazy wild. The Fae, right? One of the common names for the Fae is the furthest travelers. So it gives sort of examples that maybe the other immortals are just like short travelers. They don't jump as much, whereas the Fae kind of go all over. And actually, the worm didn't even, right? This chapter, the Risiveri got confirmation that there were other worlds. It seems like he suspected, but didn't know for sure. So that was interesting as well. What did you guys think of the baseball scene?
It's fun. It's honestly just a simple, fun scene. Just people interacting. We get to see a kind of larger scale example of how the Lucifin act and just how the Gillum kind of foil that. Or are a foil to that.
How do you think it compared to the first time or the other times that we've seen baseball? Was it different? The sort of same old? Did it?
It was closer to what I imagined the first one would have been more like before it happened. Like, kind of more of a saner, normal game of baseball instead of the absolute wildness that the first one turned into once people started showing up.
Yeah.
Which the Agilum certainly did.
Oh, yeah. And Vasir said, as well as the Titan, right? The Titan smashing the ball, and then the Griffin still being like, there it is!
Yeah, I think that might be confirmation that it broke orbit if it's not coming back down. And that is some good eyesight.
Maybe we'll see it again when we finally get to the gnome moon gnomes.
It just hits a void dragon.
It's a void dragon.
Oh, fuck.
Blue Juice said that it needed more popcorn. So speaking of, what did you guys... We got some more food recipes released by Ryoka to the chefs that like instantaneously came up with them. Thoughts on ice cream and mac and cheese?
I feel personally attacked because I have a dozen boxes in my...
Why do you think there was...
I've got a
Go ahead.
I've got a thought on that, which
You're cutting out. Try to get closer to your mic.
Might be a connection thing with that style of cut.
True. Was that Vasir or Neil?
That was Neil.
Neil, try...
we
You're cutting out.
think about it.
You just cut out completely.
Oh,
There you are. Try...
He's catching up.
Re-speak. Or just type it in. Cosmic Chaos contributes that the strength of the Angelum and Lucifin was really sort of nicely displayed with the baseball and how they're kind of complementary to each other. And that's a good point. That's what you and Tilly were getting into earlier, Courier, right?
Yeah. That's actually exactly what you're getting into a little.
So what was that?
Well, the Lucifin seem to be kind of... The Lucifin play it close. They're kind of not... They're staying kind of true to the spirit of the rules. They're not overstepping or trying to overextend with what they're doing. They're trying to basically win through a bunch of, proper small accumulations. Take what you can and don't give what you don't need to. And then the Agellum just bust down through the wall and blow up a tree with a baseball and is like, maybe I'll be bedridden for this in a few hours, but I don't give a fuck. That was awesome. Like, they don't care about the consequences, while the Lucifin are hyper focused on them.
I think
Relk would love the Agellum.
yes.
Yeah, that was big Relk energy.
How do you think the Angelum would react to Erin's fire, her glory fire?
Either outright dismissal or like moss to the flame. I can't imagine an in between.
Viserys, like they
Do we know?
overdose. You were saying, Alabaster?
Do we know what their lifespans are? Because if the glory flame causes you to like live back your greatest moments, that has some serious potential on an immortal.
Well, if they're immortal and they kind of only die out of boredom or depression, presumably they've been alive for quite a while.
Yeah, then in that case, I would say glory flame would be very, very nice for them to see. I think they'd like that a lot.
Uju says that it might actually just kill him. Which is fair, or maybe it would actually give them energy because it kind of represents... So there's been a lot of discussion about like where the Angelum are getting their power. And one thought was that maybe there's been discussions about its faith, or they were weakened by, the goblin attack or war that they were in, but maybe it's about passion and just that glory. And so maybe there just hasn't been a lot of either of those in in-world for a while, and as it's coming back more into play, they would kind of get their strength back.
Yeah, I could kind of like lost that thought. Sorry.
No worries. Neil, I know you had something that you wanted to say, so please type it into chat if you can't get the mic working. The thing I think was hilarious about the angels is they just straight up told like the knight, right, like go sleep with half your order and then rain down vengeance on the person who killed our beloved, child.
Like, yeah, I see you feel very strongly about this. I think it would be a great idea if you go and burn down the kingdom and free all the slaves. Go do it right now. Here, this is how you do it.
Okay.
Now go on and do it. And I don't think they care if they succeed or not, just as long as they try.
Oh god. And the Sariant Lamb statue is a fever dream.
I'm impressed that the cook managed to start making ice cream in cones within 15 minutes of being cold. That is fast.
Yeah. Sorry, who was speaking?
And everyone's trying it.
Oh, Blue, I just wanted to chime in and saying, like, I think the person that would most benefit from meeting the Agellum or is most on their level is not Aaron or anybody like that. I think they need to meet Queen Yasame. I think that's the person who would be most on their level. But not just like they are the fanfic that she's been writing her whole life.
How so?
I don't know if Yasami has the backbone to handle interacting with angels.
I like that
But like,
No,
we
no,
haven't
it's not
really
that.
seen her in her element, like from her perspective. It's always when things are going
I'm just thinking that
sideways.
that's her how she's looking at the world, like that's her fantasies or whatever. And it feels like they
Oh.
just like push you to try and achieve those things. And so like she's got the most built up in her mind.
No, I see what you're saying. I totally, yeah, I can appreciate that take. It's not necessarily that the Angelum would inspire her. It's that they would do a total meeting of the minds thing, hyping each other up about hyping others up.
Within a week, KSMVR and Yvonne would be in a relationship. It's just it would happen. If those two met.
Yeah, does that make more sense to you guys? What Blue's getting at? Yeah, I can definitely see that take because Yusame totally same point of view as the Angels in terms of everything's very black and white.
Blue, you're implying that they're not already a thing because those two trees that Kismer has is totally a dowry. Or is it 7 trees now?
Do we know that the Agellum don't write fan fiction?
We don't.
They probably love someone that wants to write fan fiction.
Do you think they're like the ultimate matchmakers?
There was a line around this scene, actually. I don't remember the exact quote, but it mentioned about how both Lucifin and the Agellum are trying to like meter their strength and not with basically a vessel that can't handle their true potential. Which, in the way the Lucifin and this is back to what I was talking about earlier, the Lucifin and Agellum just display their peak power differently.
Yeah, I definitely.
I need to find that quote stuck in my head now.
Cosmic Chaos said the fanfics give them strength. So we've got wheelchair angels of like basically cheerleader angels or maybe Viking angels powered off of fanfiction.
Have you ever seen what's that movie? Field of Dreams.
Yep.
Yeah, Field of Dreams vibes a little bit. You know, Ryoka didn't actually build a baseball field, but the Angels came anyway.
Yeah. That makes sense for sure. Let's see. We talked about Immortals. Did you guys have anything else that you kind of wanted to chat about in this section?
Yes, there was actually a thing.
Okay.
We had mermaids on horseback.
That's true.
Wait, we did?
We did.
I somehow missed that.
It's right at the start, where not Monorkel, the Nemid dude is trying to listen in on Ryoka explaining to the Viscount her activities with the guards.
Oh, okay.
I wonder how. I guess they must have been riding side saddle, or did it imply that they?
Oh, it was Merfolk.
Did they split their legs?
I literally only I just had one request of 8 million words in. I was just like, I want Ryoka to get mermaids on her immortal dance card, and she did. And this is just above and beyond for me. The fact that we got to see them on riding horses.
Yeah, the
Not
chapter
a
says
thing I
they
thought was
were
gonna happen.
riding awkwardly in their Merfolk technically, but I imagine they're doing like the ladies sit, like you have both your legs over one side of the horse and you basically stick to what's the term, canter. Like you don't really go full horse speed. You're not using your hips to hold on.
It's fine. They were seahorses.
I don't think that makes it easier to ride now.
Javon said that the immortals have access to body shifting magic, so I think there is a line in there that said they kept forgetting that they had 2 legs, and so they kept acting like they were having one fin and falling off, wasn't it? I would like to see more about the merfolk, though. That's like I feel like there's not enough written narrative wise ever about mermaids and mermen, and I'm happy to see more of them too.
I want to see some people drown to death, damn it.
That we already have the drowned folks.
I mean, like actually drowned.
Was Luan's potential drowning not enough for you?
It wet the throat. It prepared me for it.
This is
But I
not a
didn't
fair
get the
thing
full
to.
drink.
I was gonna say this is probably not fair to ask with going on literally nothing, but like it would be cool if we did get more merfolk and they have, because we never found out what the sea's bargain actually is. And if that is some big magical thing, I wonder if it isn't related to the merfolk. That would be pretty cool to find out.
I would love to spend more time in the oceans. We got exactly the seas bargain, or was it bargain or promise or demand?
I think it's the bargain because you get something in exchange. It's like you get life, you're not going to drown, but in exchange you're losing part of yourself by merging with
Yeah,
something in the sea.
I would love to.
And you don't get to pick what. You do not get to pick what.
No, but I totally agree. I like when we got the look at the drowned people's magic when we were at Wistrom with Terry, when he was still Terry and not forgetful Terry, and he was dropping lore left and right about their magic, and I was just like, oh, can we just go underwater? Like, I know there's no plot lines that tie to anything underwater right now, but I just want to go underwater and spend like a couple chapters from their perspectives. Totally agree.
Depth charge being a skill. That's such a good play on words too, in a way,
is.
because it's like the exact opposite of what a depth charge would be on Earth. Instead of a mine that you drop into the water that blows up, it's water that you bring up to the air to depressurize.
I would, if side poles ever go back to being side poles, I would love the option of just, hey, let's do a random couple chapters underwater and just talk about the life down there. Because
Side story, the perspective of a frozen book. And it's all about Sirius.
I would read it.
And the random things that happened around
Dude,
it.
we got a chapter from a bee's point of view, and Epista became like a main character.
We got rats.
And we got rats.
Like, at least a bee gets stoned all the time, so whatever.
Does anyone else hope that Epista gets to level at some point?
I would like for her to gain something sometime soon.
I want her to,
at the very least.
I want her to become a part of the leveling system. She's awesome. Yeah, lizard folk style, like Cosmic Chaos is saying. That would be great.
Oh yeah, it's Pokemon. Insects all evolve at low levels, so she should be close.
I'm surprised that Pirate even wrote it. I thought Pirate hated insects.
I'm not sure about broad insects, but definitely
An exception, maybe.
There's a certain focus on some insects, such as moths.
What's wrong with moths?
Moths are evil. There's an ongoing conflict between pirate and moths.
Is that why we had moths
the
as
only
the evil?
bug you can't leave alone if it's in your room, because it's going to be smacking lights, making noises, and somehow find its way down.
Moths have literally nearly delayed several chapters because they decided to literally fly into our intrepid author's face while typing during streams, and I can relate to that. That would definitely freak me out, and I don't think I would be able to return to writing.
They're not hitting a light bulb; they're hitting you, and they just hone in on it. It's crazy.
I think it really only happened once, but once is enough. I would again declare war on moth.
Is that why we
Mersha did put moths on the same level as the evilest people that Mersha has met?
Is that why we spent several chapters just exterminating moths out of the dungeon?
I think this was, I don't know what happened pre-dungeon moths, but we had because streaming was only the last 2 years, and we did have one stream that got interrupted by moths, and so it's at that point we could see the through line.
But bees are okay. Bees are cute and cuddly. Got it.
Yeah, bees will dance for you. Bees are and they give you honey. Whereas moths just eat things and demand your lamp.
Give lamp.
Oh boy. Okay. Bees are. I guess it's wasps that aren't chill. Bees are bees. I would love a bee update. That would be nice. Hopefully they're not dead.
Is the B team the A team now?
Hopefully. Okay, so that kind of ends that. I guess one last question. Would an Angelum be the absolute best wingman or the absolute worst wingman?
It
nightmare.
depends on if you're going for consistency. I think you're going to get spectacular successes or spectacular failures because the Angelum are just going to keep escalating whatever happens. But if you want to win, you should probably go with Lucifin as a wingman. It just might not be the quickest or obvious thing. It just might not work out anyway.
We probably should call out the fact that like the friggin' devils were giving Ryoka an attaboy. It was the thing that got both the Angelum and Lucifin on board was the fact that they assumed that everybody was right about the dalliance with 3 knights at the same time, and they were just like, all right, we're clearly in this girl's corner.
It's like, we got a big guest bed.
And just to throw back to earlier, Draconis was responding to the conversation between the Queen and Risaveri about whether or not it was kind of homophobia. And it was 100% homophobia with a solid emphasis from a few other people about that as well. And Javan, just sort of back to the discussion between the Angelum and Ryoka. Javan is a solid fan of them poking so much fun at her. But and that's actually one point. We did get clarification about what happened between Ryoka and the guards, and it looks like everybody was wrong. So
We're right, depending on how you look at it. Both sides of the argument were right.
Or wrong.
Just at different points.
So at least that got cleared up. But that wasn't even the major focus of the chapter, right? Everybody's kind of major freak out, I think, was the next section. And that, because that's what the majority of the questions are about. So Ryoka and Risaveri kind of meet up. They said, cool, we're going to have this conversation. Ryoka's prepping for however the talk's going to go. And they sit down, she sits down, and Risaveri gives us his life history while he's drinking or has been drinking. And then he kind of pulls a move out of nowhere and brings some friends back. And then we've got a surprise appearance kind of last minute at the end of the chapter from Kara. So lots of things going on towards the end of the chapter. Let's kind of start out with... Let's see. Okay, so we got a lore drop from him early on about the Creelers. So we now know where Creelers come from. What did you guys think about that?
Well, I'm not sure if this will be completely where they came from. Just a portion of what spawned them is very worm-like. I mean, it could have been spontaneous from a worm corpse, but that's kind of weird. There's got to be something more there.
Well, it matches the reproductive cycle. They have the telepathy thing.
Yeah.
Do you think that, like, the worm... Because...
I agree that worms are definitely a major component in Grellers.
Just corrupted somehow?
Yeah. It's almost, like, designed by Free Queen. Like, not that I'm saying that happened, but a similar parallel. Like, something made this, and a major component was definitely worm. And there's just a whole bunch of other stuff tossed in there, too.
So they're kind of like...
We still don't know how or why. Because supposedly they came out of a black ooze from the sleeping one, but now it's apparently worm-related? So how did the worm genes get into the ooze?
Do you think the sleeping...
Very specifically stated that one of the worms went to Rhea and then Krell's happened.
Yeah. I mean, it is. That means they are apart, but there's got to be more to it. Because the Krellers have always been stated to have just kind of like formed from sort of creeping black gook is how they kind of describe it over whatever the hell is going on.
Well, but to echo that, they did make reference to the thing in here, which I presume is Sleepy, but Risaveri acted like he knew what it was and Ryoka knew what it was. Did I miss something? Is Sleepy a worm? Is it, like, what is it?
No, Sleepy is something bigger than that. Them saying what it was isn't in relation to the whole, like, Kreller spawning kind of.
Sleepy is something capable of turning a worm into the source of Krellers.
And do we know, did anyone else kind of get an idea from this chapter that they know what it is and they're acting like we're supposed to know what it is? Or
Yeah, they were walking around just subject consciously, the same way Terry Arc did earlier.
So did we get confirmation that Sleepy's a dead god? Or, like,
I don't think it counts as any sort of confirmation. They're still not pulling the trigger on what it actually is.
We just got confirmation that Risaveri knows that there is something terrifying on Rhea.
Yeah, Risaveri is aware of the threat danger.
Gotcha. So we've got some reactions. Let's see. Dvorak says that Creelers are the corrupted version of worms/dragons because Creelers abundantly give off eggs. Let's see. Dvorak.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah, Dvorak said that Creeler. Okay, so Creelers are corrupted merger, maybe of worms and dragons, due to the egg thing. We've got a question that maybe Wimvir, the non-speaking telepathy, the how do you pronounce that courier?
Telepathic.
No, Wimver.
I do Wimber.
Wimber. Okay, so
I'll get close with room there.
all right.
Yeah, I probably don't roll the R's enough.
So is that person's ability based on Creeler's ability to incorporate other species traits? What do you guys think?
I think Wimber has been straight up said to be based off Krellers. And if Krellers were based loosely on worms... Sorry, I just took too many steps.
Okay, Vizier thinks that they're both wrong about what is under here because Terry said Ryoko was wrong. They just said it's not smart to speak its name. And Javon points out that Wormriver's name now actually makes a lot of sense because it is actually quite close to worm. So do we think that telepathy spread from worms to other species, like maybe the cephalids and the ants in this case?
No, I think the Selphids are their own individual evolution path towards that, but I'm unsure if the telepathy would just be from... Like, the Antinium already had that in a fashion. Wimber could have maybe a slightly stronger sense or a different stylized because of the Krellers being loose, maybe probably partially based off of worms. But that would just make him better at something he's kind of already capable of doing. It could also explain why only him and the Twisted Queen are the only ones kind of still capable of their pseudo-anastasis, if they both have a bit of worm in them, and the other ants have, say, less of that.
That's true. And it could just be that it's not even like, well, and they could have maybe gotten it from the worm. So Blue Juice is saying that Sleepy was the one that gave Antinium telepathy because he's the one that made the Antinium. Is that correct? Do we know that Sleepy made the Antinium?
I think Rear's... The BK has said it.
Said they did.
He did?
Yeah,
I don't remember Phil ever saying that.
Kilbert has said on multiple times that he's the source of the fact that Sleepy is a dead god, and then he's also said, yeah, he made us and we rebelled.
Huh. It says Rahira made the Grand Queen then rebelled eventually, according to Vizier. Do you mean Rahira the country, or Rahira just like the
as a continent made it, so like it would be Sleepy that made the Grand Queen.
Okay, and the first Queen, not Grand Queen.
Yes.
Huh. There's so much lore there that as much as I don't like Rahir, I do want to go back to Rahir because we always get a lot of development and lore drop.
The continent can only throw off so many I'm important flags before you start wanting to, tour there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I heard they're recruiting for combat tours.
Oh, God.
Anyone want to take a portal?
They just got a bunch of Earther heroes in. I think they're good. Yeah, I don't really... Okay, Javon's saying don't really like any of the people we know when we're here. I wouldn't mind going back to the Demon's Court for a while. Okay, we'll do kind of maybe last comments on this topic, and then we'll move on to a different part of this section. Javon said that demon side of things could be cool or fun. If the worm that made Creelers was corrupted, does this mean that she's a tier above ancient Creelers? By Cosmic Chaos. Probably. Probably it was an ancient worm that had a lot of power. And Blue Juice thinks that Sleepy is Perusa's dad. She's not that evil. She's evil, but, well, maybe not evil, but she's a terrible person. So, let's see. Some other aspects of this exchange between these guys was the Fae, right? The Fae kind of came out of nowhere when Risaviri basically summoned himself into Faeland by calling Oberyn's name 3 times while clutching Ryoka. So, lots of questions here. One was the Fae are often presented as dualistic. Actually, we'll pause on that one. So Risaviri just threw into this thing like, hey, I can't use this scroll of rejuvenation, not giving it to Ryoka, who wants it? And he opened up like probably the most epic auction ever to happen. And one theory is, who's going to get revived? And maybe it would be the Fae Queens. Do you guys think that if one of the queens is revived, the other one would be revived as well, since they're kind of dualities of each other? Or do you think somebody else would be revived, or nobody?
I don't think it's practical for it to work on the queens. I kind of forgot that they were a duality of each other, so maybe there's a way to hook into that. For some reason, I actually expect Nama to win it. And for some wild plot point to bust through the wall involving that. Because Nama's really suspicious. But not necessarily in a bad sense.
I mean, it could be that she just revives whoever she's missing and then just disappears from the plot line. That would just take care of the scroll.
Yeah. Kind of weird, but acceptable. Something that caught me about this scene was Melidor's perspective right at the start, as they reacted to Risveri's call.
His violence?
Like, he was not quite happy that it was happening. He wasn't, like... He was half of a lot of stuff. He was like a mixture of insulted, angry, and confused. And he was fully prepared to just crush Ryoka like a bug.
Well, he really hates humans.
She's not here for a good reason. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, what I kind of thought would maybe go down is it's going to be Evileth and him somehow tricking and competing to try and get the scroll to revive their particular queen, right? They're the 2 individuals that we know that stick to I am only winter, I am only summer. And he seems to be, like, really want his queen to come back. Evileth, maybe not so much, but I'm almost kind of wondering if they're going to duke it out over the scroll somehow.
Sorry to drag it back to what I was just talking
about. No,
go
for it.
But he was taking this, like, kind of approach summoning point of contact with Inverse so seriously that if there wasn't a good reason, he wasn't going to kill just Ryoka. He was going to kill all the worms.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just right there on the spot. Just like, nope, this is bad. You have caused contact in a fashion out of our control for a reason that wasn't good. You have been voted off of the island. And, like, straight up violating hospitality.
It's interesting that the
man was prepared, and it reminded me a lot of Tolv.
Yeah. I guess what also, now that you think about it, why did we get his perspective? Out of all the Fae and out of all the characters, why does he keep coming up? He just doesn't seem like a main... he's interesting, but he doesn't seem like a main character. Do you think we're going to see more of him as a main at some point down in the future?
I mean, he was the first, like, basically named Fae we were introduced to after Ivalist that stuck around. And he's the first one from the Summer Court.
True. Let's see. Blue Juice is saying that to revive the stick, because the stick is the power of the tree, and it probably is a world tree fragment, which we also learned exists.
That's so meta.
Actually, that
connects you to the alien plot.
Yep.
And then we get world, and then Yggdrasil crosses dimensions.
Well, and we've also... Risaviri said that, what's her name? The Dryad would be willing to kill him for the scroll. I mean, Pythia. Yeah. Do you think?
Yeah, that's pretty serious.
Yeah, do you think she's gonna? Do you think she's gonna find out about the auction?
Well, I mean, if she hadn't really heard much of the Phalanx before, so if she does, it's going to be far too late, and there's not going to be a reason for her to kill him.
True.
Why get into a fight when there's no actual gain for it? Like, she's kind of too old for that petty, like, oh, you did this and then I found out about it later, but I could have used that the whole time, so I'm going to kill you for selling it thing. Like, nah.
The one thing that I had a pet theory on was I kind of wondered if Evileth and the Fae almost sort of planned this out. Like, not that they can predict the future and control it in its every path and destiny, but if we think back, right, we're told time and again that the Fae work on so many different levels. They're always tricksters. We hadn't really seen a lot of it. We've been told time and time again. And then Evilith has this look, right? She looks at Ryoka and she just kind of gives her a sad look and shakes her head. And I almost wonder, there's no way Evelith didn't know what that scroll was when she went to find it. And she had to, you know, I almost wonder if she kind of just arranged for the opportunity for the Fae to actually get access to the scroll, right? Because before, the worm wasn't doing anything with it. And now they have the potential to the scroll of resurrection.
I think it's possible that there is a larger plan at work, but I don't think Iva would be in on it. Part of this, even if they had known there was a scroll, the Fae wouldn't have had a way to project anyone into Inverse to bring it to them because of their contract. They're not allowed to interfere with anything that could affect lives. And the scroll kind of fits that definition, both literally and figuratively, in the sense that you're not going to get that scroll without risking a lot of people and a lot of
Right, but
issues.
think about it, right? They
have a no interference policy, and interfering to get that scroll to them would be that. So like it does make sense in a way that this is kind of just a long gamble to where like maybe Ryoka will bring this to them somehow, but I don't think they ever planned on the scroll being brought to them. I think this is just a surprise.
I mean,
For Fifthia, I would
yep.
kind of posit that we know that the Drake or the Worm Lady had her own place to carry, but we don't know what Silverpine was up to, right? And he came to the party as well, so there may be something later in the future that he does that causes ramifications for Fifthia, in my opinion.
And I think there's a minor chance this won't happen, that Oberon will end up getting the scroll and then destroying it. I think Kel brought this up as a possibility.
Yeah.
Initially because it's funny, but I've had a kind of a back thought for a while, thinking that the scrolls might just be a trap, like hooks into Dead God in a certain fashion.
That's a good point.
And like using it would actually be a fail condition if you threw that on air and like, oh, grass, you just lost the fight for us right there.
You wasted the sun.
So like Oberon just intercepting that scroll and using it for his own gain, even if it doesn't like, or just to get rid of it, even if it doesn't affect the Queen's situation at all. That's just good stuff. Very small chance that happens.
Well, there's a lot of crack theories that honestly got spawned by this last section of the chapter. We've got a few. So Blue Juice says that maybe the dead get the message to their living agents about the scroll. And this actually ties into, I think, a lot of people's hopes that there's going to be a heist scene, right? That a lot of people are going to send agents to Elidemius and make a play for this thing.
It's not there.
Which I'm like, you know what? I always am down for a good thief scene. I'm still hopeful that could happen. I think that'd be cool. Vasir thinking outside the box, saying, hey, let's just use the scroll to res the guy who made it in the first place to make more. I wonder if you probably have to know the person, though. You can't just be like, the person who made this. You probably have to know like the name or have a connection to them. Blue Juice says that maybe the scroll sort of helps the dead gods, gets them back into the world somehow. I honestly wouldn't put it past Pirate to... Right now, we kind of see the Fae as this sort of, maybe not good, but definitely something that we prefer over the gods, right? The dead gods are kind of viewed as the enemy right now. And I wouldn't put it past Pirate to somehow use this to make the Fae a bit more complicated and almost swing opinion back to maybe favoring the dead gods and sort of playing off, right? They have a thing about making characters complicated. So I could see her using this somehow to make us not maybe like the Fae as much as we do. Blue Juice is saying that the dead gods have an appointed time. What does that mean? Oh, are you referring to the scene where the five figures, like, bailed on Tiandria? Yeah, was that the gods or was that somebody else?
The five figures fleeing Tarandria is definitely reference to the five gods that are left. The sixth one having leapt off the ledge a number of chapters ago. Like there's nothing else that would explain that
Gotcha. And then Neil,
without it just being a rug pull.
yeah. And then Neil made the point that we don't know anything about Ryoka's prophecy, and it could be that the scroll ties into the prophecy somehow. Why? I thought that, now that I'm reminded of the scene of the figures fleeing, were they...
They felt the gate to the Feylands opening, and they fled because they were worried that the Fey would cross over. Because the Fey were ready. Like, they're just waiting for a large enough gate for them to come through, and they're just gonna try to come over.
Oh,
bust
okay.
nuts or whatever they do.
So were they talking about the worm, or were they talking about Oberon when they were referring to him?
I'm not sure which scene you mean by that.
Jivan says they were...
Oh, if the answer displeased him, that was sorry.
Well, Jivan...
I was thinking of the scene with Melidor where he's contemplating genociding.
If they were talking about Rasveri, they would say Rasveri because Rasveri doesn't get any power from saying his name or attract any attention from saying his name.
Oh, fair.
Oberon, less so.
And Jivan says it was Oberon as well. But didn't they say that he didn't know what he was doing? Why would they say that Oberon didn't know what he was doing?
I'm lost at where we are.
Do you remember the scene where the five figures fled out of Tiandria? And they were muttering to themselves about what he was doing.
Oh, that was definitely one of the perspectives from the dead gods.
Right, but who was the person they were talking about? Oberon, Rasaviri, or somebody else?
His name would be referring to Oberon. Maybe? Yeah. And then they would be wondering probably why Oberon is also opening the gate at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I was confused about. Is like, you guys make good points for Oberon, but just certain things that they said just didn't make sense to me.
I think the dead gods were surprised that Oberon was stepping in so soon because they were expecting it, and they probably know that he's not ready in his own way. You just step in and clean house. So like they just kind of got confused and played it safe and left.
So the quote is, "Who was saying his name? Why was he risking it? The fool." Yeah. So like when they're talking like, so you know, the who in that is Rasveri and the he is Oberon.
Gotcha.
And the risk is that Oberon opening the portal is a risk to him because the gods might use it against him. But they are not currently willing to take the risk, so it is less relevant to.
When did Summer Court end in inverse timeline wise? Like when would that have ended? Because this is maybe the first mention of fall. This could be the start of Fall Court.
I don't know.
Because they avoided the gaze and the touch of fall itself.
I mean, it's definitely
which
fall.
Also works as a pun.
It's definitely fall, but I don't know. You're right. I don't know when summer ended.
I think this is just a good point of confirmation. The timeline slowly establishes. We're in the third season, boys and girls.
Definitely. It's taken 8 years to get through 3 seasons. Let's see. Pat says that summer solstice is midsummer, so it's probably been about 2 months after, so we're just hitting fall probably very recently. Blue Juice says that maybe Erin could walk out of a portal from the Deadlands. I mean, she could, but she still needs a body.
Congratulations, you are now a ghost in real life.
Okay, so Javon has galaxy brain. Okay, so we've done the Fae. We've talked about resurrections. Okay, so let's just assume that the scroll of resurrection isn't being used on Aaron, right? At all. Like, it's off the table completely. We knew it was a long shot anyway, but it's gone. So if that's off the table, does this free Ryoka to negotiate with maybe the other immortals, even Riz himself, about other things that she could use to help, right, bring Aaron back? Does she need the scroll of resurrection? Visir mentions maybe use the scroll of raising the dead, which was mentioned. Could she take a deal with the Lucifin or the Angelum? Basically, does removing the scroll kind of help? Does it tie into whatever piece was missing to res Aaron without using the scroll?
To be absolutely sure, we'd have to see what Rosvari gets out of it.
Like what he gets for the auction?
Yeah. It could go anywhere, and like this also removes the one MacGuffin that's been keeping Ryoka at Aelandamas, aside from being a prisoner, which for the situation makes end.
Oh my god, how BS was it that she paid 10 obols to free herself for not even stealing anything? That was worth maybe one.
Did she actually pay them?
She tossed him to the ground and walked away.
Oh, okay.
And she wasn't even willing to give like one because they were so valuable, and he just totally mind fucked her. And anyway,
I mean, I think she's just done with the situation. It's like I just want out. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're such an important thing, but it's such a hard resource to actually use.
Well, she could bargain with the other immortals for maybe things for that. Like there's a lot of resources there, and maybe she was too focused on this big pie in the sky when there's actually smaller pieces that are going to be more useful.
Well, when that pie on the sky is for some reason not eating you yet because he doesn't like your very existence, it's kind of best to deal with that issue first.
Yeah.
Something that I noticed about this chapter is the first scene and towards the end scene, like it opens up with a description of his grounds. And that sets up the imagery for when Ryoka talks to him later and he starts doing, the whole like moving around, kind of circling around you, just totally not casually threatening you with his body while he's just like, why do I not, just kill you? Whole monologue.
Yeah, it really tied in nicely.
The imagery was well set up earlier in the chapter. Time to marinate a little, and then it came back.
That's actually a good point. I hadn't noticed that. But yeah, no, that's nice. Let's see. And I like the touches of setting because it helps me visualize the scene a lot more. Blue just said that Ryoka admitting that resing Nama's kids or Titania herself, right, might be more important than Aaron. And yeah, that's a good point. And kind of Ryoka having to face that is probably really hard.
It's a giant trolley problem, and we're probably going to have to multi-track drift it.
Or just remove the trolleys completely.
How dare you?
Javon said that Ryoko's hoarding mostly to try and get the scroll, and so that kind of just brings up the point. Now that the scroll's off the table, assumingly, what could she bargain for, right? What deals does that maybe open up with the immortals or, everything else? She still has obols. I think she had more than 10.
It's honestly, she could do anything with it. Like, she's got this incredible pool to, like, there's magic teachers, there's weird people, there's artifacts galore probably that just people aren't really bothering to show off because I bring it up.
And we don't know how many obols she has. We just know that she has a bag full, but she has more than 10.
She also went through the thought process about if she had actually done a deal. I mean, because she's already had you have to remember the context for this, that she's already been in a situation where she's been offered a deal from an immortal. Her name is Bella, and that had horrific consequences that she wasn't thinking through.
True.
But she decided to pass when she realized that was the case. And now she's literally got a race of devils who could probably offer her similar deals with consequences, just right at her beck and call. And she's just imagining herself making the wrong decision and fucking things up for Aaron.
I suddenly just occurred to me, sorry, while this thought is fresh, I think Melodora was especially mad about how soon this was happening because Ryoka has those stones which are a way to hook back towards the Fae. I believe she was supposed to have bargained off the vast majority of them by now and got them loosely on the same side to the Fae to kind of use that as a hook and a breachhead for their invasion to deal with dead gods. It would be the declaration of a faction in a way. Like if you have those stones. Sorry, just sudden thought.
Well, no, that's Ryoka. And like she's supposed to be getting allies to go fight
and that's why
another
Meldor
dead
was
god.
furious. Was like,
Why
why
would she
so
be
many
better at
stones
getting
coming?
Guys,
allies for
try
fighting
not to talk
6
over.
dead gods?
One at a time.
One dead.
Okay, so one at a time. Whoever was just speaking, repeat, please.
Oh, I was just saying, why would she be better at getting allies to fight 6 dead gods than she was for getting allies to fight 1 dead god?
Because it's not about her getting allies, it's about her spreading those stones to varying power bases that will end up aligning against the dead gods in the future.
That's a good point, though. We keep talking about like epic strategies and smart things to do with the resources that they're given, and has a single character really managed that yet at all?
Risveri. I was impressed.
Yeah, but then like Meldor's mad because like this is too soon, like this won't be enough for us to invade. And then Risveri, comes walking through the door and was like, "Hey, I've got a scroll to sell," and everyone's just like, "Excuse you? Okay, let's go."
Everybody should just be more like Val Teresia and just steal stuff and then don't apologize.
It's a serendipitous meeting.
Jeez. You're right, though. Risveri is probably the only character I think that we've seen that, given. But he is supposed to be the best of the best, right? There was that whole plot line with him telling his backstory and Ryoka realizing that, hey, like this is the main character, dude, right? All the suffering and turmoil, and he's the best of the best hero kind of deal.
For the area, yes.
For the world, yeah. Or for him.
Yeah. He is definitely the youngest of oldest people.
Do you think...
And the best of them.
Do you think Eldovin would be able to take him on, or Terry would be able to take him on once he remembers? Or do you think that Risveri's right?
A full-strength Terry, taking it seriously, could probably wipe the floor on him, but a worm isn't going to fight head-to-head.
Yeah.
Do dragons get more powerful with age as well then? Because Terry wasn't just a dragon; he was the last dragon lord of flame. He was like from an exceedingly powerful portion of his people.
He might be multi-elemental.
And he was older, far older apparently, because if he was a legend when he's coming out in the time of the Age of Heroes or whatever, if he's already the last Dragon Lord, then he's probably grown just as much as Risveri has.
Seems like the general consensus is that Terry would definitely win as long as the Risveri doesn't have enough time to plan, I think.
Risveri might have more treasures. He might actually be better equipped because, like you said, Terry just literally sits in his cave and counts everything. So, Risveri is a far more active participant in the world and has probably hoarded way more stuff from the Age of Heroes than... I mean, he's literally got better loot because he has the revival scroll.
Yeah. It makes...
But Terry was awake and moving around in a greater period than Risveri. Risveri hasn't quite cycled through the ups and downs as much as Terry.
But that kind of is actually a point against Terry because he's so lost in his memories and depression that he doesn't even connect with what the current time is.
Well, I mean, he also doesn't need to if he controls 25% of all the artifacts on the planet.
True.
Fuck it.
I'm going to channel my inner Yusama here and see that clearly what we're missing is that the two are the fated lovers that Risveri's been looking for.
I thought they were the
Somebody
fated enemies.
Excellent enough.
Risveri pulls out... No, Terry pulls out a scroll of polymorph.
What greater potential than enemies to lovers?
I was going to say, do we ship... As much as Risveri is resealed... God, the thing is a jerk, but...
Oh, yeah, actually...
It's the Princess Bubblegum and Marceline situation. This is our adventure time.
Kilara brings up a great point that Terry has a literal dragon throne, which is the in-game goal for Risveri. So that definitely one-ups Risveri in every situation.
Actually...
Doesn't the dragon throne have an interdimensional portal? That might be a way to actually get into the cave.
That's true. That is very true.
It has the pocket dimension.
Oh, they have to break into Terry's cave through Callanfur. Oh my god, and that's a heist arc. So it'll be Leon, both the dragons, Rickle, Ryoka, and a small cast of supporting characters. And let's go. I mean, let's bring Pawn too, just for the family interactions.
But yeah, I think, oh god, Brack says that the worms get bigger and bigger, but the dragons seem to get better magically. So in a magic face-off, Terry would probably win. And physicality, I think the dragons can transform, so even physicality wouldn't matter.
Yeah, even Raspberry sees that point. Like, dragons can polymorph easily, which is probably some big bullshit to deal with. When you're a giant fucking, like, 3-mile-long snake that's trying to crush something, it's like, why are you Spikeball?
God. Let's see. So one of the last questions or sections of this chapter was just all the implications from Kara showing up kind of out of nowhere. And this last line of, "This one's for you, Batman." And then the author's note that sort of says, "That last line lacks a lot of context. And it's a bit weird, but it's a plot thread." And so yeah, like what's the context behind that line, and what are the implications of Kara showing up?
Kara actually cares about the war that Elendamas is part of, and Ryoka has thus far made exactly zero effort into trying to steer them away from the conflict. She didn't think that it was even remotely possible to persuade them, even though she's got the entire court running around and literally chasing after her at one point. And so at least Kara can maybe bring a more grounded goal or assist her with Aaron's revival rather than hunting for the MacGuffin, which is the ultimate revival scroll.
That's a good point. Ryoka may have not been able to achieve the whole resurrection scroll thing, but she could have accomplished a lot of lesser goals, like getting the immortals on her side to stop the war for the dragon throne, or at least be willing to negotiate for it somehow.
Ryoka is the best person for Kara to encounter to get caught up with the plot. And I think Kara's group is a place that Ryoka could fit in and have a lot of dynamic in.
It's about time for Kara to kind of join the main plot, honestly. She honestly should probably be like the third or fourth major main character, and we have seen very little from her.
Enough time in the world.
She's also a good Aaron replacement temporarily, at least in terms of giving Ryoka another character who has got levels and status within Inverse. And so, I mean, arguably far more than Aaron in terms of clout for the average person because her story's grown so big.
And motivation.
Yeah,
But like,
she
so
has
she could
cynicism to keep herself afloat in politics, which has always been proven from the initial point. I think Karaki's point would have probably been whatever the encounter with Bellavere was that got her so connected with the princesses of Calenford.
Kraft makes the point that Ryoka could have done something to stop Tyrone slaughtering people. Which people? Rat. I can't even believe I'm saying this, but yeah. Who? Which people did he not slaughter?
The
Navy.
The Pride of Welfare, or whatever it's called, that's harassing the crap out of Elendamas' Navy.
Did she even know that he's there?
Which actually, because the Pride of Welfare is doing that, that's the only reason Kara was left. Like, they couldn't leave this place because it was blockaded. So Tyrion going to war with Elendamas is the only reason Kara can make it to Elendamas.
Huh.
As funky as that logic is.
Honestly,
yeah, Ryoka could have done something or some communication with Tyrion to maybe call things off, but I'm not sure if Ryoka should start interfering with both sides of a national war while she's still a prisoner.
She's not a prisoner anymore. She's been recognized as an emissary and she got full pardon.
And how asshole-ish, but admittedly, I get it, but I still think he's an asshole move. I'm going to just keep Sammy as a prisoner and use him, like, somebody needs to smack that thing. Like, where's the fairies?
Can we just say that Sammy's getting a little bit ill-treated here? I know he's not the most popular. I actually quite like him, but I think he's funny for just being a spirited little kid, kind of like Marcia if she could actually talk. If Marcia could actually talk, I think she would be loathed intensely.
I think if Marcia could speak, she would have been raised differently. Because, like,
Misha is a spoiled little brat. Let's just, like, deservingly so,
yeah,
but she is spoiled brat.
Situations to crack down, I can't imagine. That just seems like you can't tell if it's a nightmare, and the child specializes in not making noise. Like, God, that's so fucking scary.
But I mean, Mishra's been through hell, so she's due some forgiveness.
And then also, I think it's just weird that like he jumped in there to try and like save her, and she had to do all this stuff to keep him alive, and then he's just kind of faded into the wallpaper in her consideration. She's like paid almost no mind to him at all. We literally don't even know where he's been at the last several chapters.
Yep.
That's a point. Actually, I didn't really. You're right that he hasn't been present as much as he probably should have.
Like,
but how would you work him in with any of this?
I think probably just playing again with the like. I mean, it would have been like really small mentions. I don't think it's a massive oversight. I just think based on like you said, the political ramifications, like it's just like a one sentence thing that he's just using as a dig against Ryoka because she wasn't thinking about it. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm also going to use him as bait now. You're free, but you also gave me really nice bait. Thank you.
oh god, he's just.
To be fair, Ryoka only just woke up at the end of the chapter from, I guess, losing consciousness. So
do you?
I don't remember why that scene opened like that. I guess Risveri knocked her out.
I honestly think an epic scene that we've gotten some build up for would be, we know that the Pride of Welfare, if they quote unquote know what they're doing, can take out, right, a dragon and probably a worm. I would not mind seeing said worm get his ass handed to him.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
just imagining like a triple
Ryoka came
warbreak.
out sick after the whole auction thing and double tour.
I heard Courier, and then who was...
It's Blue Juice. You can go.
Let Courier go, because I was saying something that was kind of tangential. It wasn't about the Pride of Welfare, so let him say.
Yeah, what I had lost track of was the scene transition between the auction starting and Ryoka in her room, and I forgot that Ryoka's room scene was her stumbling in, just not feeling well. Yeah. And then there was some short conversations, and then the Kara reveal. So like Ryoka hasn't had time to do it involving Tyrion or Sammy by the chapter's end, even though she seems to be not a prisoner.
He's also a celebrity. Like those two being together, it's like the Brat Pack. It's like, and I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean like it's like that's the level of company that she probably would be associating with. They're probably the two most famous Earthers that exist.
Other than Joseph.
And Joseph.
Joseph might be more famous, actually, just based on the leveling system literally breaking.
Yeah, it's a fun scene. I'm glad he didn't take permanent damage from it.
Vizier.
That we know of.
Vizier is hopeful that Ryoka's got free reign to go after and date the knights. But yeah, I'm always
Ryoka in the Thirsting Veil. God, it's such a terrible romance flick, man.
Do you know? Do you guys see the implications of the name too, though? Like the Thirsting Veil.
Oh yeah, it gets pointed out at least once a day for the past weekend.
I just haven't been paying attention to chat, apparently.
It feels like it to me, but I have a very biased memory.
Okay, so last point, which was brought up in the author's note, and I really applaud Pirate for doing this. We've been saying for a few weeks, months, years now that they should try to aim to write shorter chapters. And hey, 27,000, you know, not bad. Go for shorter.
It's funny that this is now an improvement.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to bring up.
But it is a process.
What?
And they actually, as of the past few updates, they are trying to crunch a lot harder than normal, if I remember right.
So
the shortest chapter in the last 2 volumes was 14,000 words.
So this is the point. We've had 2 shorter chapters. We've had about 50 million longer ones. What is the consensus here? Like, shorter but better? Just happened to be a one-off because of the topic?
Shorter doesn't mean that it's going to be less content. I think the problem is, like, if you do a shorter chapter, it has to be focused on one subject. Some of the larger chapters are several subjects that get very small entries into, like, side plots. So, like, a side plot will get a few paragraphs, or it might even get a few thousand words. onto a larger story. So like to the point where like this could have ended at the beginning of the auction and everyone would have been quite happy, but then we got even more hype and it built towards Kara, and like so that happens on a larger scale on the larger chapters to me is what it feels like. Like it feels like there's several like potential climaxes that we have within a chapter, and then those could easily be standalone stories in and of themselves, with each climax being the end of a chapter.
They do tend to be thematically similar when that happens, though. I think really helps the process and sort of reason for the flow in an indirect way.
So are we hoping maybe to see more of a mixture of like shorter focus chapters and just a few longer ones, or doesn't?
I don't know if it's fair to rate what's better. I mean, I get objectively less words is better since it's less work. I don't know. I think they're all fine. I just would want Pirate to manage to write a chapter that they wrap up on and feel like this was actually what they set out to do, instead of like, oh, this is what I set out to do, and then 20% more.
That's fair. I like the cohesion in this chapter. I felt like the focus made it tighter writing. We did get some nods to other stories, which I did appreciate. Like it was nice to see Kara come in, but I agree with you that maybe a more natural end would have been the auction announcement. And I wouldn't mind seeing more of these shorter chapters as long as
I think
they maintain the cohesion.
Go
ahead.
I think the follow-up scene with Ryoka stumbling to her room is kind of important because it gets you not waiting for the auction scene. Like, you already know we're not going to see most of it. Maybe if it won the poll. Poll talk. And I think that's actually a really important part of how the chapter wrapped up, was her getting to her room, being in a mode of recovery. I think that's probably the best point it could have left off on, instead of just like, all right, boys, start auctioning.
That's fair. And it's a nice connection to what we probably expect to see next in a Andrea chapter, which would be Kara, maybe Rabbit Eater, and Ryoka.
Oh man, Rabbit Eater with Kara's band.
Rabbit Eater doesn't. That's Numb Tongue.
Yeah, you're right now. He could still just be a lead singer, of course. They can work him in. They know how to fake it.
He doesn't even talk.
That's why it's perfect.
Okay. Cosmic Chaos says lots of 3 to 4 chapters worth of chapter ending revelations jammed into one. Dvorak says short chapter, but very impactful, and was very much more productive when Pirate wasn't live streaming. So actually, sorry, that's one last question before we wrap up. I know we're going a little bit on the later side. So there's been some talk about maybe cutting the streaming down. Do you guys watch the stream? Do you enjoy it? Do you think it's helpful to Pirate? Not really.
I watch a stream. Usually I end up catching up on the first stream through VOD. So I'm not really terribly present. I'll still chat in stream chat even.
Mm.
I think it's obviously entirely up to Pirate, but they seem to enjoy it. I think there may need to be some sort of reshuffling of how chat should self-police in some ways. Because lately it has been easily, not just lately, but for a while it's been slowly hooking into more off-topic tangents at times, especially like, and this can happen oddly in between chapters where it just turns into a stream off topic instead of anything about the chapter. Everyone's just loosely speculating, which is great, but it side tangents into other things all the time. And I think that is part of the annoyance that is built up with the channel.
So
streaming.
Almost like maybe a thread that we can throw people into to just like go chat in.
Yeah, like stream downtime after hours or something.
Yeah.
Speculation, all that stuff, and then like just kind of I don't know.
Well, consensus seems to be that everybody loves the stream for those that watch it. Some of us don't. We hang out in Patreon chat, which is totally great. Love to see people there. Cosmic Chaos says that they love the stream, but they're kind of unsure about whether or not we should be offering critiques or just enjoying and cheering Pirate on. And I agree that maybe clearing up expectations of what is in stream chat, like what you were saying, Courier, would be helpful for everybody, especially for Pirate, if the streaming does continue.
And kind of not related to the off topic, but that actually is something that I meant to bring up. Larger critiques could just as easily be brought up after the stream ends instead of during the process. Because part of like a lot of the upsets that happens is just like chat just ends up turning into a stream of critique about one or two things, while Pirate's still just trying to finish writing the chapter before deciding to change things later if they
Right.
or want to.
Night Blue Juice.
So,
you're saying, sorry, Courier.
Yeah, no, that was kind of the end of the thought. I'm kind of recollating it now. What I'm saying is, like, maybe for larger or seriouser critiques, it could just wait a bit, unless it's something like really glaring. But if it's just a general opinion of how everything is going, or like a particular topic that's pretty, what's the term?
Just some clarification on expectations, I think, would help everybody and help streamline it. I would agree. And maybe some active modding in there.
Like the critique's useful, but it also doesn't need to fully be discussed about in the stream chat following it.
True.
Maybe. It's the only place that can be, and this is just kind of me applying my own perspective on something. It's not maybe as serious as I word it.
That's fair.
Just trying to establish what I mean.
It's hard because once somebody has watched the stream, they can't talk about it anywhere except that channel. But if it's supposed to be only relevant to giving feedback, right, you can't get into discussions. And so maybe that's where a spoiler stream chat thread kind of comes into play. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just hard to get large use out of threads in a way.
True. We need a separate off-topic channel for stream chat.
Or maybe just like, there's not an easy fix for what I think is the larger issue about the whole streaming that could be an issue, maybe. Either way, I just want Pirate to do what they feel like is best for themselves.
Yeah, whatever's
Screw everyone else.
most beneficial. Dvorak and Quinn both say that streams sort of been serendipitous in their usefulness, or in its usefulness. Typo murderers, catching small plot holes that may have, not been addressed, or just sort of rounding out rough edges. We'll take final comments here, and then I'm going to cut this recording, and then, it's open chat, open mic night, I suppose.
Yeah, no, stream's been absolutely great for the whole process. Not even as a viewer, but just in what's happened to the story and just minor things that get caught.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and
but those are definitely all the positives.
Yeah. But yeah, if it's becoming a burden to Pirate, it's not helpful. All right, and that's a wrap. So please join us next time, and we look forward to seeing you here on TWI Talks after chapter discussions.